Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, Public Payback to a Customer Who Refused to Pay. So I had a garden maintenance business, and had a lady living in a very nice area call me and ask me to do some regular visits. I was actually in the process of selling the business, but made 6 visits. She was pretty bad at paying, but had paid a previous invoice, so I let her balance grow to about $300 before sending numerous reminders. When she found out I was selling the business, she obviously decided to try and not pay me. I was texting and emailing her every few days, and she would ignore 90% of my messages, and eventually ask me to stop harassing her, stating she had COVID and would settle it the following week. I'd basically written this off in my head, not caring about the money, but was angry because she's a high-profile lawyer, lives in a rich suburb, and had the means to pay me. I also mentioned the situation to my mom, who said that I shouldn't threaten a lawyer and should just walk away. Once the business had sold, I found her lawyer profile and where she worked. This is a big company in the city, and I noticed they had Google reviews open but had 0 reviews. I left a 1-star review very openly stating this was not the company but her and what had happened. By this point, I've moved to South America for 6 months of backpacking, and I didn't really care what would happen. I got a call from Jordan, the new owner of the business, the next day, saying he'd received a call and was having legal action threatened against him, and asking me to remove it. I told him the situation, and I asked for 24 hours more to resolve it, and if it got too heated, I would take it down. He previously worked for me, and I consider him a friend, so thankfully, he was all good with that. I quickly spoke to my brother, who has a law degree, just to make sure she was just bluffing. At the end of the day, it's not illegal to make a Google review. I then received an email from her demanding I remove it and she would pay me. I very strongly worded a response saying it will not be removed until money is clear in my account. I fell asleep then, and when I woke up I had 3 more emails, initially threatening me, then eventually saying that she had paid the money. Once I checked the money was in my account, I removed the post. She had made it very clear that she was under extreme pressure from her firm. I'd also sent the email to their reception, and I'm sure the whole office was aware of this incident and her reputation had been affected. Moral of the story, if you have a public profile, don't treat people badly in the days of the internet. I also feel especially content that I faced up with a lawyer who probably thought she could scare me and not pay, and give them a taste of their own medicine. The next story is titled, Stole My Seed, eh? Now we're going to get real cozy. I, 43M, flew southwest recently and spaced on checking in early, so I ended up way in the back of the plane. It was only an hour flight, so I wasn't too distraught about it. I had a single large backpack as carry-on, so after making my way to the last few rows on a packed flight with a line boarding behind me, I spied an aisle seat and told the fellow at the window I'd be joining him, leaving the middle seat open for the moment. Again, it was to be a full flight, so every seat would be taken. I went to stow my bag in the overhead and discovered it was full, so I turned slightly to the left to reach up to the compartment in the next row behind me. Having stowed my bag, I turned back to take my seat, only to discover the guy who had been in line behind me, who absolutely saw me and heard me tell the guy already seated I would be sitting there, had decided to just help himself to my seat. I immediately chimed in with, "Hey, I was about to sit there." To which he replied with a shrug and a really condescending smirk, then offered, "Oh well, there's still a few seats behind you." I looked behind me and contemplated if this was a hill worth dying on. Turns out it was. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Nope, we're best friends now," and squeezed myself into the middle seat. I am 6'1", 230 pounds. He was at least that, as was the window seat guy. This just became a very cramped situation. As if the universe was already on my side, I discovered immediately that he was sitting on half my seatbelt. I very forcefully pulled it from under him, and followed it with the same shrug and smirk he had earlier, with a shy, "Sorry." Once we took off, I found it very hot in there, and needed to remove my zip-up hoodie. Of course, this required standing up and lots of arms flailing backwards to remove it. Smirk, "Sorry." Finally, refreshments made their way over. Being in the middle, I politely passed window seat guy his drink. Then, "Oh my god, so sorry," smirk. I clumsily mishandled mine and splashed the poor fellow. Snacks came shortly after. Who knew trail mix would travel like a confetti blaster if you opened the bag with too much force? Smirk, "So very sorry." The next story is titled, knew I was getting fired, so I scattered 200 business cards around the office in various inconspicuous places. I was working for a staffing agency as the branch sales manager a few years back. My new boss was and is a complete shothead. Had no idea what he was doing, had never worked in the industry, started pitting managers against each other to determine loyalty and support. We had a small office in the back of ours that he would use from time to time. One day, when I was in the office taking some lunch, I found that he was still logged into his email. Considering how much I disliked him, I snooped. I found out I was getting fired. Sucked, but I had a few irons in the fire already, so I was ready to move on. I immediately started hiding what was left of my business cards all over the office. In individual files, taped under keyboards, under desks, under chairs, taped to the back of the wall decor, between sheets of copy paper, all over the place. I still have a friend who works there, and after 4 years, they still find a random card somewhere in the office at times. It's a nice reminder of how they screwed me. My boss was fired about a year later for bad production. The branch is bleeding to this day. The next story is titled, Smug Karen Takes My Car Keys Because I Can't Possibly Be the Owner. Earns herself a ride in the back seat of one of our country's finest. This is just a throwaway because I don't care to stick around for long, but this incident was so stupid that I can't really help but share this story since my friends keep telling me to. What I find most weird about this is that my car wasn't anything super special. It was just a yellow '09 V6 Chevy Camaro with black stripes. When I bought it, it was super cheap because the passenger side door had been smashed in somehow and there was already 130,000 miles on the odometer. But the title was still good somehow. No idea why, nor do I really care. It was sold to me via proxy. All I know is the car looked like a good deal, so I bought it. A friend of mine who works in auto body fixed it for me. He said that most of the damage was to the door itself, and I just needed a new door after he made a few tweaks to make sure everything was straight. Together, we managed to find a door at a salvage yard that was the same color. A little work, and the car looked almost new, and it became my fun ride to commute to work or drive around when I didn't feel like using my other car. I didn't do any modifications to it. I'm not one of those guys that's into speed or crazy mods. I liked the car because it looked cool, and the gas mileage wasn't so bad with the V6. In fact, I wanted a V6 Camaro because I heard that they're usually in better condition than ones with a V8, because people drive the V6 more for looks than power, and don't gas it as much. I drove that Camaro for a year before running into a random Karen at a supermarket last year in September. Those places tend to draw Karens in regularly, especially in the state I live in. I've seen many Karens, but was lucky to hardly ever be noticed by them. I was shopping for some stuff to make dinner, and was about to head home when I found the Karen with her young son all over my car after exiting the store. I'm guessing the boy was about 4 years old, and his mother was taking pictures of the kid sitting on my hood while the kid kept smiling and gleefully saying, "Bumblebee." Yes, I understand the reference, and I've heard it all before. I don't like people messing with my property, and told the kid to get off. The Karen took one look at me and told me to mind my own business. Now, I'm 29M, but I have a bit of a baby face, and my casual clothing made me look like a teenager, so I guess to her I couldn't be someone who'd have anything to do with such a nice car. That's actually a pretty common car. I told the Karen to get off my Camaro, and she bluntly told me there was no way it was my car because I'm too young. I pulled out my keys and hit the alarm button on the remote. That made the alarm start blaring for a second, and her kid jumped off while screaming and crying because I'd frightened him. But rather than pay attention to her crying child, the Karen came running at me full speed and managed to shove me hard enough that I fell over. The next part is a bit hazy. I got a bump on the head, and that crazy idiot slurred every word she was screaming at me. She stepped on my arm and pulled the keys from my hand before I really had a chance to react, though she didn't really hurt me much. She was not a big woman, only around 5'2" or so, and a twig, while I'm 6 foot and over 170 pounds. When I got to my feet, she was comforting her crying kid and telling him that I was a mean person. I told her to return my keys, but she got hissy and said there was no way the Camaro was mine. I again stated it was, and I would only give her one more chance to return my keys. She didn't. Instead, she handed them to her kid, who proceeded to start playing with the buttons on the remote and unlocked the doors. I had enough and got my phone out to call the police. When the Karen saw I was on the phone, she started screaming and charging at me again. Though this time I easily dodged her, and she nearly fell on the asphalt and screamed I'd assaulted her. I never even touched her, and said as much out loud. The 911 operator was listening to everything that was going on, and I quickly told her where we were while this insane woman was still screaming at me. And 2 police cars had shown up before long. At this point, the Karen had locked herself in my car with her son and started the engine to run the AC. I explained everything to the police, and they knocked on the window of my Camaro to get the Karen to open it and give them her side of the story. She claimed the car to be hers, and that I was just some stupid, broke-ass teenager that tried to carjack her. Then bragged that she'd taken me down. The officer asked if that meant she'd shoved me over, to which she bluntly said yes. I told the police to look in my glove compartment. In there was my insurance card and a copy of my registration, and they could compare the name on my license. When the Karen heard that, she got out of the car and finally admitted it wasn't hers, but then said there was no way it could be mine, and that she just took the keys from me to find the real owner. That quickly earned her some shiny new bracelets, and she was put screaming into the back of a police car. The parking lot had cameras, so it was easy to prove the assault, though I only really got scratches, a bruise on my arm where she'd stepped on it, and a small bump on the head. After the Karen was taken back to the station, they found she was high on drugs. Which explains why she was so nuts. I, of course, pressed charges, though my testimony wasn't really needed since the police had both CCTV from the parking lot and the audio from my phone call. It turned out to be the Karen's 3rd offense, and she got 2 years in prison. Oh, and her kid was taken from her. The whole incident made me rethink owning the Camaro, because it had been a magnet for people that bothered me a lot. So I sold it. Basically got back everything I had into it anyway, so I broke even. I doubt I'll want to own another sports car again. The next story is titled, Your Dream House? I'm a city planner, and one of my jobs is code enforcement of unsafe properties. Today, a coworker gave me the dark history of one of our town's boarded-up homes, and I had to share this story. This man built his wife her dream house. She loved it intensely. Later, during their very ugly divorce, he fought like hell for the house and gave in on every other point of contention so he could keep the house. After he won it, he proceeded to not just let the vagrants and junkies move in, but actually invited them to live there. Thieves stole the wiring and appliances. Vandals broke the windows. He let the trashed property get condemned as unsafe, and eventually got called into City Hall for an infraction, where he gleefully relayed the story to my coworker. The man was happily letting the bank repossess the destroyed house, getting cited for nuisances, and going bankrupt. All to get back at his ex-wife. The last story is titled, Robbery Turns into Exercise for the Robber. I know that there's a post on an Ask Reddit question that sounds very similar to this. I'm shocked that 2 members of humans could share this level of stupidity. Here's what happened. I was sitting in the parking lot of my local Walmart, waiting for a call from my friend on what he needed from the store. He's currently got some nasty food poisoning or something and has been projectile vomiting for a day or 2. My window's down a bit because it's nice outside. Out of nowhere, a guy runs up to my car, knife in hand, and shoves it into the gap between the doorframe and the window. He's flailing it like a dying fish at my neck, and I freak out. I shriek like a little girl, almost piss my pants, and jab at the window button to close the window. He starts shrieking and drops the knife and tries to pull his arm out. He's not even gotten around to demanding my money. I fumble my phone and call the police. I'm pissed at this guy. Who wouldn't be? He's cursing and bashing my car and is threatening to murder me and my lineage, so I tell him to shut up. He doesn't, so I put it in drive and take my foot off the brake. He's caught off guard and starts saying, "What the duck are you doing?" I don't answer and tap the gas. Long story short, I took him around that parking lot for about 5 minutes before the police showed up. By the time they did, he'd lost a shoe and was totally out of breath. Yes, I'm a petty little craphead. No, I didn't get the knife, they took it for evidence. Yes, my window got messed up. And yes, someone I knew heard me shriek like a little pansy. I'm not living it down. I'm just hoping that the officer was right about him not having grounds to sue me for unlawful imprisonment or something like that. 1 out of 10, do not recommend. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.